Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Stop Mass Hysteria, Michael Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate filling in for Dr. Savage. He'll be back next week. In the meantime, I encourage you to go to michaelsavage.com for all the latest headlines and subscribe to the Savage newsletter. While there, pick up a copy of Dr. Savage's latest New York Times bestseller. It's called Stop Mass Hysteria. It's in stores now, and I love the fact that his books keep going to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. It drives liberals crazy, especially those over at the New York Times. Welcome, Lou Pate, here with you. Great to be here today. Great to be on the air today. Gosh, there's so much going on. We're going to get to all of it. A shooting at a California bar in Thousand Oaks, California, 40 miles or so north of Los Angeles. I know the area well from when I lived in Sherman Oaks. Used to ride my Harley Davidson up into that neck of the woods. A beautiful, serene town, one that on most years ranks as the number one place for no crime. It's the least crime in the country in Thousand Oaks, California. And here we have 12 dead, including a 29-year veteran of the Ventura Sheriff's Department up there, a gentleman by the name of Ron Hellas, father of one. The shooter, a former Marine, armed with a Glock 21 .45 handgun with an extended magazine. For reasons still unknown, used a smoke bomb at first as a diversion, killed a security guard, bouncer type, outside. Went in, made a right-hand turn into the bar, again, for reasons unknown, and then opened fire. There are a million stories coming out of the bar, those of bravery, those of heroism, most notably the deceased sheriff's sergeant there, Ron Hellas, but more as well. We'll get to some of those a little later. We're not going to say the name of the shooter, okay? It's out there. It's in the news. If you want to find it, you can, because I think that a lot of these guys are doing this now to go out in a proverbial blaze of glory, to get their name in lights and to have somebody have a Lifetime movie about them or write a book. But I will tell you this. The Democratic Party is very sad today at this shooting. The left-wing media is very sad today at this shooting. No, not because of the tragic loss of life. It's the Rahm Emanuel school of thought of never let a crisis go to waste. He didn't use an AR-15. He didn't use any other semi-automatic long gun or rifle. He used a handgun that millions and millions, thankfully, of Americans have in their homes right now as I speak. And trust me, the Democratic Party, the lemmings in the media, fake news over at CNN, fake news over at MSNBC, they don't care about the victims of these types of crimes. They don't care about the worshipers at the temple, at the synagogue a couple of weeks ago. They don't care about these people here. All they care about is how can we blame Trump? That's all they care about. How can we make this stick to Trump? And that's why all of the reporting you see out of the newspapers, the left-wing newspapers, whether it's the New York Times or the Bozo Post, the Washington Post, or, clowns like Jim Acosta and Peter Alexander at MSNBC and so on and so forth, because it's not about delivering news to the people. It's not about informing you about a tragedy. It's not about looking into it and researching it and doing investigative journalism and finding out how maybe this can be prevented. Well, mass shootings can't be prevented. That is just a fact. It's about how do we make this stick to President Trump? They're already blaming him for this mass shooting. It's a sad tragedy for the families, many of some who have not been notified yet, whether their people are still alive or not. So it's one of those things where the media looks past humanity, no compassion. Their hatred, their quadrupled hatred for Trump just goes so deep. And it really makes them pathetic. We're going to talk about look at me, Acosta a little later in the show. He lost his press credentials to the White House. And, as Dr. Savage has said, he has no right to be in the White House. He has a right to free speech. He could stand on the highest hilltop and scream hateful things about Donald Trump, but there is no right to be in the White House. So it's truly an amazing phenomenon, the way the midterms, which we're going to speak about as well. There's numerous recounts going on in Florida where I sit. It's all about bringing down this president. Every story, the backbone, the foundation of it in the presentation of the media is about bringing him down. We have the shooter in California, the murderer, okay? It's obviously a situation of mental illness. When you look into the history, police had been to his house a few times, PTSD stories coming out from former roommates. Obviously, to go into a bar and do something like this, there's something wrong with this guy. He's getting drugs. Is he getting it from the VA? We don't know. That's speculation on my part. But if the Veterans Administration is giving these guys drugs just to make them go away so they can't be bothered, so they numb them and medicate them, they're not doing them a disservice. It is not good for them. Dr. Savage has made that point many, many times. I'm aware of situations like this as well. Okay, and the police can't or won't do anything about it. This person has been examined and then determined that he wasn't dangerous, because nobody can be bothered. Nobody can be bothered until something like this happens. Okay, when you talk to the police, they say, "Oh, we can't do something like this until he does something or she does something." When you talk to doctors, they say, "Oh, we can't do something until he or she does something." And then you all have to sit back and wait, and you have to live on edge. And when you take your dog out at night, you have to look up the street to see if crazy is going to come and whack you. Or you have to watch what you're saying when you go in a bar, because this nut who has frequented this bar and got beat up in a bar in 2015 is going to come in blazing. It is truly an amazing phenomenon. It is a huge problem in our society, mental illness and the violence that comes with it. Yet it's not about that. Nobody cares about the mentally ill. Nobody cares about our unhinged veterans. All it is how can we make this about Trump? So we have the shooting. The media is going to try to make it about Trump. They already are. We have Jeff Sessions out as the Attorney General. The acting Attorney General is Matthew Whitaker. He is in there. Trust me, folks. This has everything to do, the media's analysis of it is all about Robert Mueller, okay? It's all about somehow saying, oh, Trump knows that they're about to get him, and he's trying to fire the people in charge. No. I have nothing against Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions seems like a good Southern gentleman, the first senator to support Donald Trump when he announced his candidacy, but he didn't show up for the job. You don't show up for the job. You don't show up for work every day, you're going to get fired. He didn't do his job. It's as simple as that. It's not complicated. But now we have Joe Manchin, tough guy, senator reelected in West Virginia, saying we're facing a constitutional crisis. Joe Manchin's going nuts now because he's brave. He's got 6 weeks. He has 6 years ahead of him now where he won't have to face re-election. So all of a sudden, the meek and demure Joe Manchin all of a sudden has his beer muscles on, and he's shooting off his mouth saying we're on the verge of a constitutional crisis due to Sessions' firing. No, this is all about the Mueller investigation, which has no teeth. I've said it many times when here. There's no there's no crumbs. I could give you every analogy you want, every anecdote you want. There's nothing there. But it's all about getting Trump. And now we have Nancy Pelosi possibly going to be the Speaker of the House, midterm elections, Democrats taking the House. I think they're up plus 13 or 14 seats, something like that. They were plus 37 the other night. And is there going to be a civil war in the Democratic Party? This is something that nobody wants to talk about. She's already anointed herself because I think the fix is in. And they call Republicans the party of old white guys. This is, let's see, Chuck Schumer, senator from New York, is about 77, right? 78. And I'm not being an ageist. I'm just citing the obvious. And what Pelosi's like 78 8. I think amazing. Maxine Waters, I think she's 145 at last check. Truly, truly amazing. But it's not about helping the American people. It's about attacking Trump when they take over the House. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, poor thing, Supreme Court Justice, fell down, broke 3 ribs. That's never good. At 85 years old, it's even worse. I see people on Twitter politicizing this, making jokes, wishing her ill so that Trump can get another pick. Look, I would like Ruth Bader Ginsburg to retire and step down. I certainly don't want to see her ill, don't want to see her die. But she should have stepped down before. I would have liked to have seen her step down before this. But we wish her a speedy recovery. But trust me, the Dems are going to prop her up on the Supreme Court like it's Weekend at Bernie's. They're going to make her go out feet first, poor thing. But again, 3 broken ribs, don't wish that on anybody. Well, maybe a few people, but not Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And we wish her a speedy recovery. So there's a lot on tap, and there's the Florida recall. Now they're looking at a possible recall in the governor's race. Come on, Gillum. Have some class, man. Have some dignity. You already conceded. Don't pull a Stacey Abrams up there in Georgia where you're digging in. And also the Rick Scott, Bill Nelson race is under review. There's going to be a recount there. They must be using the Miami Herald printing press to come up with new votes for the Democrats down here in South Florida. So one of the questions I have for you is, do you think Florida will wind up in Dem hands if the recounts continue? And in reference to Nancy Pelosi, who will be the bigger threat to the Trump administration? Pelosi, Waters, Schiff, or the radicals on the left? Or is that redundant? Aren't they the radicals on the left? Truly an amazing phenomenon. And I mentioned earlier, Jim Acosta. After witnessing the reaction one day after the midterms, do you think the tone will ramp up or quiet down? We had a split decision basically in the midterms. And, Nancy Pelosi said what she had to say. She wants to work with Trump. Trump said what he had to say. He wants to work with them. The media couldn't have this. Why do you think Acosta pulled that stunt? Number one, he wanted to be the story, which is the number one faux pas by any journalist. But it was also to be a flint and ignite the flame. That's all it was about. So truly an amazing phenomenon. And as I mentioned, Jeff Sessions is out. Will the new acting attorney general, Matt Whitaker, stop the Mueller investigation, or do you expect Mueller to wrap it up soon? I say just let him go. I've been saying that for years because there's nothing there. They're going to come up with the same conclusion. Yes, the Russians tried to influence our election. Well, they've been trying to do that since 1945. And we stood in their way, blah, blah, blah. No collusion, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that and a lot more coming up. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, again, I can't wish her well enough. But what do you think is going to happen if RBG, the notorious RBG, there's actually a book out about her called that, can no longer perform her functions? I really do think it'll be a Weekend at Bernie's thing. So that and a lot more coming up here on the Savage Nation. My name is Lou Pate. The phone number, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Remember, go to michaelsavage.com. Get the latest tome, Stop Mass Hysteria. From what I'm seeing out there in the news, the hysteria will never stop because the Democrats and the lemmings in the media that crawl at their ankles simply cannot get over the fact that President Donald J. Trump is the president. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. You are listening to The Savage Nation.
Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Welcome back. Lou Pate here with you in for Dr. Savage. He will return next week. We're talking about the tragedy of the massacre in California, the firing of Jeff Sessions, the Civil War with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. A lot of the younger ones don't want her in there. Look at me, Acosta, and his sense of entitlement, had his credentials taken away. Dems trying to steal races in Florida. But I want to play this soundbite for you. This is Bernie Sanders on the firing of Jeff Sessions. Clip number 8, please, guys.
I hope very much that Trump does not believe that by firing Sessions today that he is going to interfere with that investigation. Because if he does, that's a very serious offense. That has to do with obstruction of justice, which I personally believe is an impeachable offense.
There are very few people on the planet who are less repugnant, who are more repugnant, than Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders said this about the governor's races in Georgia and in Florida, where I live. He said, and I quote, I think you know there are a lot of white folks out there who are not necessarily racist, who felt uncomfortable for the first time in their lives about whether or not they wanted to vote for an African American, end quote. I mean, that is not even racist. It's just ignorant and stupid. We just came off 8 years of a black president, an African American president, for those of you who are offended. It's truly, has he been sleeping? Has he been spending all that money that his wife allegedly stole from the university? I mean, what is it with this guy? And why doesn't the media ever call him on this? With the election and the two-term presidency of Barack Obama, all that stuff is out the window. But it hit me. They have nothing else. The Democrats have no platform. They have no plan for you. They have no ideas for health care, for the economy, for housing, for anything. So they just keep going back to the same old, which is racism. No. Millions upon millions of people voted in Florida. Millions upon millions of blacks in Florida voted for a white candidate. It's not about racism. But when you have no other argument, that's all they have. So Bernie, go away. You're really repugnant. Hey, my name is Lou Pate. You are listening to The Savage Nation. Go to michaelsavage.com. Order your copy of Stop Mass Hysteria. This is The Savage Nation.
Savage.
Welcome back. It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate here with you along with Team Savage. Dr. Savage will be back next week. In the meantime, go to michaelsavage.com, get the latest headlines, and subscribe to the Savage newsletter. Pick up a copy of Dr. Savage's New York Times bestseller. It's called Stop Mass Hysteria. It's in stores now. We've been talking about the tragic shooting. A guy with PTSD, former Marine, goes off the rails. But the problem is, like all of the others, he was on their radar. They knew about him. The police had been to his house, overly medicated by the VA or whoever, and then he snaps. And as is always the case, they say, we can't do anything until he does something. That is code for everybody doesn't feel like doing anything. Everybody is lazy and cannot be bothered, and then they just hope that something doesn't happen. Again, with the VA over-medicating these guys, giving them drugs, it's just not good for them. It's as simple as that. Dr. Savage has made this point dozens of times right here on the Savage Nation, but sadly enough, nobody wants to listen to the grand advice. Let's get to the phones. Line 2, KBET. Frank, welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate.
I was working a construction job in Arizona, and a 27-year-old Marine was on some drugs, and he jumped in the dirt and started crying and having serious problems. They give them psychotropic drugs that'll make even a healthy person sick. And I want to say something. There's a corrupt CIA psyops where what they do is all these shooters have.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, you know what? They give them these drugs, and maybe it could make even a sane person crazy. And listen, I'm not belittling anybody's service. Anybody who volunteers, I tip my hat to them. These guys and gals who have seen action, we don't know what they have seen. I can only imagine the horrors. Actually, I can't even imagine the horrors. So with that in mind, though, when they come back and they're damaged goods, the way to deal with it is not just to numbify them with whatever they're prescribing to them. Truly an amazing phenomenon. But we have a lot going on as well. We have the shooting. We have Jeff Sessions. We have Jim Acosta losing his credentials. Of course, the media jumping up and down, crying free speech, so on and so forth. Was it right or wrong for the administration to yank Acosta's credentials? Remember, he's a repeat offender. They should have taken them away from him a long, long time ago. There's probably a reason why Jim Acosta's estranged from his wife right now. Could you imagine him at home? Like, if he doesn't like what's for dinner, he'll hold the plate the way he was holding the microphone away from that girl. I mean, it's truly an amazing phenomenon that Jim Acosta, a clown prince of the West Wing, thinks that he is more important than getting a message out to the people from the President of the United States. He should actually just show up in a diaper with a pacifier. It's a joke. And you have clowns like Peter Alexander, who I mentioned earlier, at MSNBC, defending him. What are you defending? What are you defending? A petulant child throwing a fit in the White House press room because he wants the president to fight with him? Please. Jeff Zucker, man, you got a new knee. You got a new knee. Get some new talent over there. Let's go to line 1, WABC. Steve, welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate. How are you?
How are you? I reported this morning when I woke up and saw that Mr. Acosta was suspended from the White House. If that was a Fox News reporter, the media spin from the left would have been that he assaulted the girl.
Exactly. Do we have anybody care if they banned Fox News, if they took away their credentials for inappropriate behavior, or any other, Newsmax or any other conservative news outlet? Would they care? No, but because it's one of their own, they go to town. And like I said, this guy's he's done this many, many times. He's kind of become a joke there.
Just the way he manhandled her, they would have been all over it. That he pushed her and touched her arm. And then, he was just belligerent. And I honestly thought Trump was going to come off the dais and hit him.
Now, that would have been something. That would have been something to see. I think he wanted to. He handled it pretty well. And I think what you're saying is when he walked away from the podium, he was really maintaining his composure. So, hey, but thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Hey, let's listen to this. We have some time here. This is a little long. It's like a minute and a half. But this is CNN blowhard Jim Acosta attacking Trump at the press conference.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to challenge you on one of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that.
And why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in this election to try to keep them?
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual. It happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN. All right. And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was
going
to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts.
Well, I'm not a big fan of yours either, so
I understand.
To be honest.
There you go. There's Peter Alexander at the end. Oh, Jim Acosta, be my friend. Buy me a beer at the bar afterwards. I defended you with our bully president. Unbelievable. Peter Alexander was in Seattle when I was in Seattle, and let's just say I could do a show about him. But we have that, and we also have the issue Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as I mentioned, very sad, falling down, breaking 3 ribs. Will she be able to continue her functions as a Supreme Court justice. We wish her a speedy recovery. We wish her health and happiness and a long life. But what do you think was going to happen if Ruth Bader Ginsburg can no longer perform her functions? This, folks, is why elections are important. This is why it's important for all of us to get out and vote. You think about, they lost the House, the Republicans did, but they kept the Senate, added a few seats, might be adding a few more after the recounts. And this is why it's important. We won't have a Blasey Ford situation again where people come in, as she did, and in my opinion, lied through her teeth and made stuff up about the nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. Actually, we've had 2 of the 3 accusers now admit that they lie. So we're just waiting for the third one, Blasey Ford, to come forward and admit that she fabricated. This is as an aside. Brett Kavanaugh in a GoFundMe page was raised $600,000 for his defense, his legal fees. He donated that to Catholic charities. That's an amazing thing. I tip my hat to him, but I'm not surprised at that. Blasey Ford, she raised $860,000. Hasn't given a penny of it to anybody, but records in Santa Cruz show that she has applied for licensing and certificates and permits for renovations on her house. How convenient. Will Nancy Pelosi be the speaker is another deal. The young Democrats in the House want no part of her. The old guard wants her in there. Let's get back to the phones. 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. So much going on. I want to try to get to all of it. Who do you think is going to be the bigger threat to the administration? Is it going to be Pelosi, Waters, Schiff, or radicals on the left? Let's get to line 3, WABC. Dan, thank you for holding.
Hello.
Hey, Dan, you're on the Savage Nation.
Oh, hi. 2 things I want to say. For the left, there's 2 rules on the left that really matter. Number 1, whatever they accuse you of, it's something they're doing. And number 2, they never recognize accomplishment in anything. They don't want solutions to problems. They want problems. They can run on problems. I think what happened Tuesday was a big defeat for them because for the Democrats, they have now totally boxed themselves out of any input on Supreme Court justices. And it's their own doing that did it.
And not just that, Dan. Supreme Court justices, obviously, that's the centerpiece of the dais there. But you have your district court judges and all the other federal judges that are going to be appointed now. It's going to be a freight train rolling through of conservative appointments, and there's nothing they can do about it. They want to get all mired down in the House, on the House side with in phony investigations. Let them waste their time. But was it Senator Graham and also Senator McConnell, I'm not a fan of either one, to be honest, warned them that they did it in the 90s and it didn't work out too well for them.
Well, they could follow CNN over the cliff if they choose, but that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to amount. And the way they're going right now, if they waste their time, when they have an opportunity to do something, I think Trump's going to end up beating them anyway, because if they work with him, he'll look good.
Well, let me put it this way, Dan. Like, for instance, we're talking Pelosi, the House, the investigation, but the Sessions being fired, okay, and Joe Manchin calling it a constitutional crisis. That is all about the Mueller investigation. But, Dan, if they want to get mired down in investigations, I think they already shot themselves in the foot. And what I mean by that is the country is over-exhausted with the Russia investigation. Everybody knows that there are leakers in the White House. There's leakers at the corrupt Department of Justice. There's leakers at the corrupt FBI. That's my opinion that these are all corrupt, not the Savage Nation, my Lupate. But if there was anything there, it would have been leaked to CNN. Shifty Schiff would have leaked it. But I think they've shot themselves in the foot because they've let all the air out of their balloon already because people are tired of this. But Dan, WABC, thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Got a lot going on. We do have that tragic shooting, and I'd like to know from you, the listeners to the Savage Nation, what do you think of these mass shootings? Why do you think they keep happening? And what can be done, if anything, to stop them? You got the issue of Jeff Sessions. What do you think it's all about? Do you think this is a constitutional crisis? And do you think there is anything to the Mueller probe? Should Matthew Whitaker, the acting attorney general, step back from the Mueller case? And then we have the fight for the gavel with Nancy Pelosi being Speaker of the House. After witnessing the reaction one day after the midterms, do you think the tone is going to be ramped up or quiet down Trump said he'll work with them. They said they'll work with Trump. I don't believe it. We're going to get to all of that when we come back here. 855-400-SAVAGE. My name is Lou Pate. This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate here with you, along with Team Savage. Dr. Savage will return on Monday. In the meantime, go to michaelsavage.com for all the latest headlines. Subscribe to the Savage newsletter, which, by the way, is delivered free to your inbox. And while there, pick up a copy of Dr. Savage's New York Times bestseller, Stop Mass Hysteria, which is in stores now. I don't know if the media wants to stop being hysterical. I think they get some kind of sick thrill out of it. Lou Pate here with you. We've got a lot going on. The tragic massacre in Thousand Oaks, California. Jeff Sessions, all of a sudden everybody cares about him. He was fired because he did not do his job. We have Representative Nadler from New York complaining and crying foul that Jeff Sessions was fired. But as producer Jim Verdi, I got to give you credit, Jim. I know you're a low-profile guy, but Jim had found a tweet of Representative Nadler from, when was this? March 7th of 2017. It says, and I quote, "Good morning. In case anyone forgot, Jeff Sessions must resign as AG. He cannot possibly lead DOJ to promote trust and rule of law." That was tweeted out by @Rep Jerry Nadler's Twitter account. Boy, the internet never, ever goes away. Let's get back to the phones. Let's go to line 3, Clint, WAAV, North Carolina. David, welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate. Hey, David, you're on the air.
Yes, concerning all of these mass shootings, I think it's a twofold thing. I think people have just they're going over the edge, and I think it's going to get worse and worse. And I think the whole thing comes down to the media pushing things for ratings, for more money, and single family, only one parent at home now with a kid. So the kids aren't getting what they need. There's no guidance from the household. There's no guidance from the school. There's,
Well, David, while all of that is true, I don't think it pertains to this particular mass shooting. Maybe with David, what's his name, Nicholas Cruz or whatever his name was down there in Parkland, who killed 17 people there. He was failed by the school superintendent, Runcie. He was failed by the coward of Broward, Scott Peterson, who, unlike the brave sheriff deputy in Ventura County, Ron Hellis, who ran into the building, Scott Peterson quivered and hid. We'll talk more about that later. But this is obviously a PTSD thing and mental illness as well. So I think they're two different things. But that is a separate problem. The lack of family structure, the lack of faith in the home, regardless of what your faith is, that plays a part, and some people go off the rails with that type of action. But in this case, we're dealing with well-documented mental illness, well-documented PTSD, and well-documented cowardice on the part of authorities and mental health people and the VA, who do not want to do anything because they're too afraid to do anything, and they give the old excuse, we can't do anything until he does something. Well, now he's done something, and 12 people are dead. You are listening to the Savage Nation.
Savage. Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Stop Mass Hysteria, Michael Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate in for Dr. Savage. He will be back on Monday. In the meantime, go to michaelsavage.com for all of your news and all of your headlines. While there, pick up a copy of Dr. Savage's New York Times bestseller. It's called Stop Mass Hysteria. It's in stores now. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Lou Pate here with you. We're going to be taking your phone calls at 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. A horrific massacre in California, Southern California, just north of Los Angeles, Thousand Oaks. Ironically, a city that is one of the safest crime-free cities voted every year. And now 12 dead in a bar called the Borderline Pub. A former Marine suffering mental illness walks in with a handgun and starts shooting. It's a 45 caliber Glock 21 handgun. The media, the Democrats, are sad today. No, not for the deaths of these people. They are sad for the fact that this guy did not use a long rifle, AR-15 automatic weapon, but he did have an extended magazine on there. So like they did with the bump stocks after the Vegas massacre, they'll probably make a lot of noise about this. But the 12 victims, they don't care about them. They don't give one hoot about one dead person in that bar. It is truly an amazing phenomenon that we have going on here. We're going to continue to take your calls on that. We'll give you updates as they come in. We have also talked about Jim Acosta losing his credentials, his White House press credentials, after yet again, I don't know how many, the umpteenth time, for not following the rules of protocol and etiquette, yet he still has the backing of his media friends. All are Trump haters. It's not about doing your job right. It's not about following the rules of etiquette when in the White House or in any news, media, journalist situation. He wants to make it all about him. He doesn't like the fact that the president said he's willing to work with Nancy Pelosi. He doesn't like the fact that Nancy Pelosi said she's going to work with him. I don't think they're going to work together. It'll be a snowball's day in hell, as they say. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, well, she took a tumble today. She fell. We wish her well. She broke 3 ribs. As I said earlier, never a good time to break 3 ribs, never a good age. But at 85 years old, I disagree with her politically, but I certainly don't wish her ill. And we wish her a speedy recovery. I just don't want her to be a Supreme Court justice. You worked hard your whole life as a lawyer. Retire. Enjoy your golden years. And I think her plan was to retire when Hillary was elected, but then Donald Trump came along and spoiled her retirement plans. I truly believe because she was appointed by Clinton, her replacement would then be appointed by another Clinton. But all that politics aside, 85 years old, God bless her, 3 broken ribs. We wish her a speedy recovery and a speedy retirement there as well, because, you know, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are not going to let this woman rest, right? They're going to drag her back in there, prop her up like Weekend at Bernie's, and that's what they're going to do. Now, we have a lot going on, and we have the questions about Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff. Who is going to be a bigger threat to the administration? We have the issue on hand about the mass shootings. What do you think these mass shootings, why do you think they keep happening? What could be done to stop them? And the firing of Jeff Sessions, so much going on. But I want to shift gears here. We're going to take calls on all of that at 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. But there is an interesting incident that happened yesterday where a reporter has said people have died from this campaign. Now, I said in the first hour of the show that Democrats have nothing to offer the people. You know, I ask liberals all the time, why should I vote for a Democrat in the midterms? And they didn't have an answer. Now the midterms are over and they still don't have an answer, even though they won the House. They're not going to do the work of the people. Their job, they think, is to undermine Donald Trump. These people work for us. But to say that people have died from this campaign reminds me of that repugnant idiot, Bernie Sanders, who said, you know, he throws out crazy numbers like 10 million people or something like that have died because, you know, health care and things of that nature. They always throw this drama out there. And with the lemmings in the media, with the boot suckers, Jim Acosta, Peter Alexander, and a bunch others there, that do their bidding for them, they throw this out there. This is a British journalist. I don't know his name. It's a little long, but bear with me and listen closely. It's 84 seconds, and he says people have died from this campaign. Clint, please, clip number 5.
This has been a very challenging campaign. It is This has been a very challenging
campaign.
It's been a very
challenging campaign.
It has involved quite a lot of abuse and a lot of violence. People have died during the course of this campaign.
Right.
Is there any way in which you think the temperature could be lowered? Perhaps peace could break out with the media? Perhaps your bipartisan relationships across the House and the Senate may now produce some change? Or are we going to have more of the same?
It's a very fair question. Look, I would love to see unity and peace and love and any other word you want to use. And obviously, I think we had to, especially at this particular juncture, we had to wait till after the midterms are over. Now they're over. If they would cover me fairly, which they don't, I'm not saying that in a hostile way. I get extremely inaccurate coverage. I can do something that's fantastic, and they'll make it look like not good. And I don't mind having bad stories. If I make a mistake, cover it. I'd like you to cover it fairly, but cover it. But when you do something terrific, look how little the economy is talked about. A poll came out this morning talking about how little the three networks, I don't think they included CNN, but how little the three networks talk about how good the economy is. How little. Almost not at all.
There you have Donald Trump. He's referencing the coverage in the media. A Harvard study earlier this year showed that 93% of all media coverage is negative about this president. Think about that. People died from this campaign? Are you kidding me? Nobody died from this campaign. People die from liberal policies all the time. People die from socialism. They starve to death. They're murdered by dictators. But nobody died from this campaign. The media has to accept responsibility. And I agree with President Trump. This is my opinion. Yes, they are the enemy of the people in this respect. They are not doing the work of the people, which is to bring information to us. They are bringing their opinion, dressing it up as stories and as facts. Everything that they have presented about this president has been negative, even the good stuff. Look at the economy. Okay, I don't have to go through the whole thing. President Obama was an abysmal failure in all he did as president, okay? And you look, he said the GDP would never be at 4.0. 2.0, he said, was the new normal. He said these jobs are going. He said these jobs are not coming back. They're coming back. He said President Trump would need a magic wand in order to make these jobs come back. Well, he must have went to Disneyland and bought one of those fake ones with the tinsel on the end of it and the sparkles on the end because he made it happen. You never hear about the roaring economy. You never hear why the economy is roaring and booming. It's because President Trump got rid of over 1,000 regulations that had a chokehold on business, big and small. The Dakota Pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, and on and on and on. They never talk about this. They wasted over a year, day in and day out, rambling on about this fake Russia probe that was started by Hillary Clinton, of all people. Are you kidding me? Hillary Clinton. Do you remember what Donna Brazile, the former chair of the DNC, who cheated during the debates and handed Hillary Clinton the questions ahead of time? Nobody wants to talk about that. Do you remember what she said in her book? This is not my words, in her own words. After she got fired at DNC, basically after she screwed over Hillary Clinton by getting caught, she would shut the shades in her house because she was afraid of snipers. Not snipers from Trump. Not snipers from the RNC. Where do you think she was afraid of those snipers were coming from? Chappaqua, New York. Come on, man. We all know. That's my opinion. That's what she was afraid of. Read her book. That's what she says there. But no, nobody wants to talk about that. Michael Goodwin today in the New York Post goes on and on. He's got a wonderful column. I love his columns. I read them every day. But he goes on about how the media used to sit there while President Obama would take 20 minutes to answer a question. They would look at him fawningly. And yet Trump, you heard the tape earlier, Acosta constantly interrupting. And even when the president tells him enough, he's asking more questions. He's asking questions from a year ago about the Russia probe. Are you kidding me? And then this clown from England, London Stan, which has been taken over by Muslims pretty much, is now, people have died from this campaign? And none of the lemmings in the media challenge him? Are you kidding me? Nobody died during this campaign. Nobody is going to die in future campaigns. But they want everybody to think that Trump was responsible for the synagogue massacre a couple of weeks ago. Trump is responsible for the shooting in Thousand Oaks last night, that it's his rhetoric, yet no one can seem to quote any rhetoric except for, oh, I'll punch him in the nose. Come on, people say that every day. But if you want to look at the rhetoric of the left, Maxine Waters telling her followers, her lemmings, to accost people wherever you see them, say she's going to take out Trump. Okay, we've had numerous references to the assassination of President Trump. Snoop Dogg, now he's like Snoop Kitten. At least his record sales are like a kitten right now. And so many others in the entertainment business wishing death on President Trump. Are you kidding me? The media needs to get on bended knee and ask President Trump for mercy. If I was president, he shouldn't even let them into the White House. Are you kidding me? It's like these people are blinded by their hatred. They don't even see what they're doing. People have died from this campaign. Send that guy back to London. Let him have tea with the Queen. Let him sit with Sadiq Khan, the Sharia-loving mayor of London, and ask those questions there. Let him go to Paris, France, where the Paris Metro Police are not even allowed into the outer arrondissements of the city of Paris because they're run by the imams. Okay? And we know how they treat women. We know what happens if you don't listen to the imams under Sharia law. You remember that documentary years ago, Behind the Veil? The murdering of women in soccer stadiums? And here we have the tear violin, Me Too movement. He rubbed his elbow while I was on the subway against my bag. I feel violated. And why is it always the ugly ones running around screaming the Me Too movement, huh? Right? What is it? What's her name there? Miss Piggy. Schumer's cousin. We get into trouble when I say that one. Anyway, we got to take a break. It's so aggravating. People have died from this campaign. Come on, man. It is truly an amazing phenomenon. So I don't think anything is going to die down. I think what you can expect are impeachment hearings, although there are no impeachable offenses. We'll hear more stupid stuff from the international media and the American media. I think, quite frankly, I think Jim Acosta should have lost his credentials, but he's such a loser and he's such a sap. They should let him in there every day, give him a microphone, let him stand in the corner with a dunce hat and talk to himself. Where is Jeff Zucker over here? Where is he? Is this guy even there? I mean, it's amazing. Maybe he can't see this past all of his 14 chins. I don't know. 855-400-SAVAGE. Lou Pate here with you. This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate in for Dr. Savage. He will be back next week. In the meantime, go to michaelsavage.com, get all the latest news and headlines, subscribe to the Savage newsletter, and pick up a copy of Dr. Savage's New York Times bestseller, Stop Mass Hysteria. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we are going to get to all of your calls. So if you're holding, please continue to hold. If you'd like to get in on the conversation, it's 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. I want to give everybody plenty of time to chat. Hey, I received a tweet that somebody was chastising me because at the top of the hour I said Democrats and their liberal lemmings in the media don't give a hoot about the 12 victims massacred in Thousand Oaks at the Borderline pub there. Very sad situation. Families are being notified as we speak. I stand by that. The Democratic Party uses and abuses, rides hard and puts away wet everyone just for political means. This is what they do. Okay, and I don't think they care about the 12 victims up there, sadly. Okay, they will use it to go after Donald Trump. They did the same thing with the victims of the synagogue massacre a couple of weeks ago. They tried to blame Donald Trump for that nutbag that went in there and killed all of those people worshiping. Okay, some were Holocaust survivors. Disgusting. It's an amazing phenomenon here in the media. The media has to be responsible, and they have to call the Democrats on their actions. They didn't care about the liar Blasé Ford. Yeah, in my opinion, she was lying. We know the other two women are lying. All they want to do is go after Donald Trump. That's all they care about. They don't care who's hurt. They don't care whose reputation is destroyed. All they care about is how can we hurt Donald Trump. That's all they care about. Now, you'll see already they're starting to blame Donald Trump for this. Go back a couple of weeks ago to the synagogue massacre, okay? And what did they do? His rhetoric is responsible for this. I'm sorry. The wusses in Antifa, who are now going to the homes of journalists and harassing them, the wusses of Antifa who destroy businesses and stop free speech on the college campus circus, those who live with their parents mostly and have their cell phones paid for by their parents, they are the violent ones. The people in the Congress, you have your Ellisons, you have your Maxine Waters, you have so many spewing hate, spewing rhetoric that would lead people to go crazy, and they want to blame Donald Trump, yet they can't seem to cite any examples, no quotes of him calling for violence. It's been this way since Charlottesville, and it has to stop. The media, you have blood on your hands. My name is Lou Pate. This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Lou Pate here with you, ably assisted by Team Savage, Jim and Clint. They always do an excellent job. They hate when I say that, but I have to give credit where credit is due. They're working hard all of the time, and I appreciate their hard work. Lou Pate in for Dr. Savage here. He'll be back next week. In the meantime, Dr. Savage is always with us. If you go to michaelsavage.com for all the latest headlines and subscribe to the Savage newsletter, which is delivered free to your inbox, pick up a copy of Dr. Savage's New York Times bestseller, Stop Mass Hysteria. It's in stores now, and let me tell you something. There has never been a more opportune time. It's like Dr. Savage he's got his little crystal ball, or he somehow looks into the prism of time and he writes these books as if they're in real time. So check it out. A must-read, Stop Mass Hysteria. Now, we've been talking about a lot of things, the flipping of the House, and we asked the question, who will be a bigger threat to the administration? Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Adam Shifty Schiff, or the radicals on the left? The Ocasio-Cortez and the Antifas and all of these nuts that are out there harassing journalists at their homes and in restaurants. And we talked about Jim Acosta losing his press credentials. In a little while, we're going to play him reacting to the loss of the press credentials. But you heard about his behavior. We've talked about it. We played it before. Now, after witnessing the reaction one day after the midterms, do you think the tone will ramp up or quiet down? And in my home state of Florida, where I sit right now, we have recounts coming on. I keep calling them recalls, but I meant recounts earlier in the show. All of a sudden, Gillum is coming forward after losing and conceding the gubernatorial race. He now wants a recount. Bill Nelson doesn't want to give up his perks as senator. He lost to present governor Rick Scott. Now we have recounts there. I'm going to call it what it is. The Democratic Party in the state of Florida is trying to steal the governor's mansion. They are trying to steal a Senate seat. Same thing going on in Georgia. Brian Kemp defeated Stacey Abrams. She had Oprah Winfrey there. You know, under Oprah Winfrey, the value of Weight Watchers stock has gone through the floor. I mean, well, of course, you have an overweight person selling a weight loss product. What do you think is going to happen? But Oprah went there with all of her fake magic, and it didn't work. The Obamas were there, and other celebrities went in there to help Stacey Abrams, who I think is pretty radical. I would almost say militant. You don't want her as your your governor. And now she's trying to steal the election. She lost by over 2 points. So I'm sure the Democratic machine is working somewhere, somehow, very hard, printing up new ballots. They probably got Bernie Sanders and his wife in there filling them out as fast as they can. I don't know. Maybe they got Pelosi's grandchildren there filling them out, putting the kid to work. Did you see Pelosi's grandson at the press conference at the election night? She's talking and he's holding his ears. Truly an amazing thing. So they're trying to steal these elections in Georgia and in Florida. Do you think Florida is going to wind up in the hands of the Democrats if these recounts continue? Truly an amazing phenomenon. Again, we have that horrible shooting. We'll take calls on that. The issue is mental illness in this one. Democrats are depressed because he didn't use a long rifle, didn't use an AR-15. So they're just going to blame Donald Trump. They're not going to make it about guns. They'll make it about the extended magazine as time goes on. But I have to tell you, folks, these mass shootings cannot be stopped. It's as simple as that. I have said it many times, and it's true. I mean, do you think these mass shootings can be stopped? Why do you think they keep happening? It's just one of these phenomenons. There is nothing that anybody can do. We talk about these countries and their gun laws. We talk about the states with the gun laws. And the states with the toughest gun laws have the most murders. It's incredible. You look at what's going on in England, where guns are illegal. They have mass slashings. They have the murders with knives in England are up through the roof. Of course, the media is not going to talk about it, just like the media is not going to be talking about, and they didn't talk about, the sexual assaults and rapes by all of the refugees from the Middle East who were brought over to Italy and to England and to Germany. Nobody wanted to talk about that because it doesn't fit their narrative. Honestly, the media is just useless. A lot of them, most of them, should just close up shop. I mean, or call themselves what they are, propagandists. CNN, a bunch of propagandists who hate the president. MSNBC, I don't even know if you can call them propagandists. It's probably too big of a word. Now you got their nighttime host, Maddow over there. She's going to have protests in the street. Listen, sissy darling, it's it's winter. Woo-hoo, it's going to get cold. Remember how they get rid of the Occupy Wall Street clowns? Winter came along. Oh, you'll be shivering your timbers out there. Let's get to the phones. Scott, KSFO, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Hi there. I'm actually, I'm listening online. I live in Florida just like yourself, but so I've kind of seen both sides. I'm from San Francisco. I've seen, crazy Democrats, and I've also on the other, on our spectrum. I've seen,
well, hey, Scott, if you don't mind me asking, what part of Florida? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Clearwater Beach, Tampa area.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you're on the Gulf side. I'm on the Atlantic side, so I'll wave across the state at you.
Awesome. But the point of my call is, why I brought that up is I've seen kind of both sides of this, and I'm only 30, so I'm a little bit on the younger side for your listenership. But, we're taught in school, from when we're 5 years old.
Scott, how old are you?
I just turned 30.
Okay, you just turned 30. You're a young man. You're in the peak of your youth, so to speak. But I just want you to know that Dr. Savage's The Savage Nation is the most streamed show on the internet where all the young people are listening. So he has a vast audience of millions and millions of people, and they range from all different age groups. So don't believe the stereotype that the mainstream media wants you to believe, that all talk radio listeners are a bunch of old white guys. That's just not true. We've gotten calls from people here 15, 16 years old. And let me tell you something, 80-year-old people aren't streaming.
It's true. But well, that actually ties into my point. My point is we're taught, from little kids that we're supposed to have three branches of government. We're supposed to have, Congress, we're supposed to have the executive branch, and we're supposed to have the court. We all know that,
Well, you got the executive, the judicial. Yes, you're okay. Go on. So
it has become two branches of government. I don't know when it started. It's probably been like this forever, but I think it's becoming more and more.
Wait, what do you mean? So the legislative branch is running it? Who's running it?
No, I think the executive. You said it when the show started. People have said it the last few days. Whoever the president is, their legacy is the Supreme Court. That's not the way it's supposed to be. What's happened now is not, Bill Clinton.
That's true in the modern era, though. That is more true in the modern era. I will give you that. But look at it this way, Scott. What is the legacy of Barack Obama?
It's not going to be his Supreme Court nominees.
No. You're right. The legacy of Barack Obama is President Donald J. Trump. Barack Obama was such an abysmal failure in everything he touched that the people revolted against the status quo, the swamp creatures, the Hillary Clintons, the John Kasichs, and everybody else on that podium with him. And if Barack Obama wasn't such an abysmal failure, we would have had the status quo. But Trump comes in with this fresh, albeit at times abrasive voice and tweets, and people fell in love with him from the minute he came down that escalator.
But I guess just my last question is, don't you find it a little bit scary, whether it's a Democrat or Republican in office, that they just, for 30 years, it's their guy or their woman? I mean, John Roberts in recent era is the only justice that has actually voted against, the Republican status quo with health care.
It's not scary. It's sad. It's scared that the judges are activists. Sotomayor is the affirmative action justice, okay? And she is just there for her vote. Kagan was never even a justice. I mean, she was never even a judge. She never even sat on a traffic court. She's Obama's friend from college, and he made her Solicitor General. That stuff like that should frighten you. Well, the fact that Obama couldn't get anything through Congress, so he did everything through executive orders, which now Trump has dismantled, that should frighten you. The Supreme Court it's politicized. It's become a crony thing now.
With that point being said, people are going after Kavanaugh because they're saying he lied. Shouldn't judges that become activists, that's an actually impeachable offense. If you were going to say, I will never support anything Donald Trump says, I will never support anything Barack Obama says or the next president, should not be a judge, because what they are doing is they are openly saying, I have a biased opinion and I will not uphold the Constitution. I will uphold my Constitution. And I just, at the end of the day, I just think it's, as you said, sad. That's what this has become.
But here's the thing. On both sides, they don't say that during the nomination hearing, because that would be nomination suicide. Mm-hmm. They say what they have to say. They say they're going to judge things fairly and according to the law and so on and so forth. But I got to tell you, if you look at the history of the Supreme Court in our modern era, it's always the Republican nominated justice who goes against. It's not just Roberts. Justice Souter, who was put on the court by George H.W. Bush, the father, he went against the Republicans all the time. Anthony Kennedy, who just retired, he was the swing vote since 1989. He was put on there by Ronald Reagan after Robert Bork had his character assassinated by Ted Kennedy, of all people. Souter, Kennedy, Roberts, as you cited. These are all people who have been put on the court by Republicans. It's the Democrats who are narrow-minded and ignorant and never, ever go against the party narrative. Same thing in the Congress, same thing in the Senate. All right. Hey, Scott, thank you very much. Enjoy Florida. We're just coming into the beautiful weather as the humidity goes north, or wherever it goes south. It's just not here, thankfully. Hey, 855-400-SAVAGE. My name is Lou Pate. Remember, go to michaelsavage.com. Order his New York Times bestseller. It's called Stop Mass Hysteria. It's in stores now as well. And boy, can the media ever stop their mass hysteria. I think they're addicted to it, as they are addicted to their hatred of Trump. My name is Lou Pate. This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Lou Pate in for Dr. Savage. He will be back next week. In the meantime, go to michaelsavage.com. Sign up for the newsletter, subscribe, and get the latest headlines, and pick up a copy of Dr. Savage's New York Times bestseller. It's called Stop Mass Hysteria. As I mentioned earlier, I'm down here in the beautiful state of Florida, where it is November and the humidity is out and the nice weather is coming in. I wish all the snowbirds would stay up in the Northeast, but that's my own personal opinion. Half of Europe should stay over there as well. It gets too crowded. But we do have a situation here. I truly believe that the Democratic Party is trying to steal the Senate seat. I think they're trying to steal the governor's mansion from Rick DeSantis, who won fair and square. We have recounts going on now. Also, Marco Rubio issued his concerns, saying Dems are trying to steal the Senate seat here. And it's what they're doing. I said before, I was only half joking when I said they're probably using the Miami Herald presses to print more ballots, and they have Bernie Sanders and his wife in a basement somewhere filling them out. Maybe they got Ocasio-Cortez, but she probably is one step above crayons and color forms. But this is what you see. This is what's going on. We saw in 2004, the night of the election, John Kerry refused to give a concession speech. We saw 2016, Hillary Clinton refused to show up at the Javits Center in New York and give a concession speech, basically giving a Bronx cheer to her supporters who worked for years for her. Again, Hillary Clinton doesn't care about people. Democrats don't care about people. All they care about is using people. The Democratic Party is all about using people for their political gain. So I'd like to know from you, the listeners to the Savage Nation, do you think they're trying to steal the governor's race and the Senate races in Florida? Do you think Florida and Georgia will wind up in Democrats' hands? I'm not against the recounts. I'm against the stealing of elections. But, the socialists on the left are always telling us, how much they love socialism, how much they love Venezuela and all the failed socialism that's out there. Cuba, former President Obama doing the wave with a murderous dictator in Raul Castro. Amazing. But coming up, we're also going to be talking about Jeff Sessions being fired. Much ado about nothing. If you don't show up for your job, or if you go to work and don't do your job every day, aren't you going to be fired? We have audio of high-ranking politicians, and the things that they say are going to shock you. We're going to play those for you in the next hour. The usual suspects, Maxine Waters, Chuck Schumer, and others. I'm telling you, even if you're bald, it's going to curl your hair. Joe Manchin has his election muscles on. He was kissing Trump's shoes just a few weeks ago, voting for Kavanaugh. Now he's Mr. Tough Guy, calling Trump all types of names like a gangster. And he says that the firing of Sessions is going to push us into a constitutional crisis. No. You know what pushes into a constitutional crisis? When you don't put people in jail who make up stories about people, fabricate investigations, as Hillary Clinton did with the DNC, and then had this phony dossier made up. When people who are involved in activities like this, character assassination of the President of the United States, a coup d'etat, if you will, through paper instead of bullets, that is when you have a constitutional crisis. When you have a senator like feeble, feckless Joe Weak Manchin, who now all of a sudden feels tough because he was reelected, not standing up for the Constitution, not standing up for the president, that is when you have problems. We'll talk about this and more. We come back, we'll take your questions, your calls, your opinions. 855-400-SAVAGE. My name is Lou Pate. This is the Savage Nation.
Michael Savage, a host like no other.